You know the line, all for one and one for all? It's a classic, from a story pretty much everyone loves. But the hero right at the center of it all, that brave, swashbuckling D'Artagnan? Well, the real story is so much more complicated than the legend lets on. So today, we are pulling back the curtain on the man who inspired the myth. When you think of D'Artagnan, this is probably what pops into your head, right? The romantic hero, sword out, looking dashing. This statue in Paris pretty much sums up the legend. This is the D'Artagnan that Alexandre Dumas gave us, a young, fiery guy from Gascony who duels his way into history. But what if the real guy was less of a reckless adventurer and more of a cool, calculated, and incredibly effective career soldier? It's time to peel back the layers and see where the man ends and the myth begins. Okay, let's just lay it all out there. The legend? A hot-headed kid. The reality? A seriously shrewd careerist who knew exactly which powerful people to get close to. And his famous best friends, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis? Sorry to break it to you, they never existed. His real connections were with guys like Cardinal Mazarin, the most powerful man in France. And while Dumas made him a lieutenant, the real D'Artagnan climbed way higher. He became the commander of the Musketeers and even a governor. The actual story starts right here, at the Château de Castelmour in Gascony, a long, long way from the glitz and glamour of Paris. This is where he was born, and it's a pretty humble, though still noble beginning for a man who was going to go on to do some incredible things. And here's the first big twist in the real story. His name wasn't even D'Artagnan. He was born Charles de Batz de Castelmour. So when he got to Paris in the 1630s, he made a really smart marketing move. He started using his mother's family name, D'Artagnan, because it sounded way more prestigious and would help him get his foot in the door. Right from the start, you can see this guy was ambitious and knew how to play the game. And this just shows you the difference perfectly. On one side, you've got the handsome, romanticized hero of legend. On the other, a portrait from his actual time period. It's a pretty stark reminder that the real D'Artagnan was a man of the 17th century, not a Hollywood casting call. So how did he do it? How did he make that climb? Well, here's the roadmap. He joins the Musketeers in the 1630s, proves himself in the Franco-Spanish War, but the real game changer was in 1643. That's when he gets the attention and trust of Cardinal Mazarin. Once you have the most powerful man in the country in your corner, things start happening. And by 1667, he's the captain-lieutenant. Now that title sounds a little weird, but listen to this. The official captain was the king himself. So the captain-lieutenant, he was the guy actually running the show, the true commander. And I love this detail because it's so real. Forget the flowing blue capes from the movies. As the commander, D'Artagnan wore a very specific uniform, a livery of burgundy, white, and black. On a chaotic, smoky battlefield, those colors would have made him stand out, so everyone knew exactly who was in charge. But his job wasn't just fighting wars. Because King Louis XIV trusted him so completely, he got all the most sensitive, high-stakes missions. And you couldn't get a mission bigger or more dangerous than arresting Nicolas Fouquet, the king's own finance minister. I mean, this whole thing plays out like a spy movie. Fouquet, the finance guy, throws this ridiculously over-the-top party at his new palace that makes the king's parties look cheap. Louis XIV immediately gets suspicious, thinking, where'd he get all that money? So who does the king call to handle this incredibly delicate arrest? D'Artagnan, of course. He personally arrests one of the most powerful men in France and then gets an even tougher job, becoming his personal jailer to make sure he couldn't escape or bribe his way out. And get this wasn't for a couple of weeks. D'Artagnan personally guarded Fouquet for 4 whole years. Just think about that. That's the kind of absolute, unbreakable trust the king had in this man's loyalty. No one else could be trusted with a prisoner that rich and powerful. D'Artagnan was a soldier to his core, and, he died like one. It was 1673, during the siege of Maastricht. He was killed in action, a musket ball to the throat. A soldier's end for a life lived in service. We're actually not 100% sure where he was buried, but his final battle is remembered. This statue you see here is in Maastricht, right near the spot where they believe he fell. It's a monument to the real man, the soldier, not the fictional character. Okay, so we've got this highly respected, incredibly loyal, and decorated military man. How in the world did he become the swashbuckling, romantic adventurer that we all know and love today? It's basically a literary game of telephone. You start with the real guy, Charles de Batz de Castelmore. Then, about 30 years after he died, a writer comes along and publishes these wild, mostly made-up memoirs about his life. And then, way later, Alexandre Dumas stumbles upon that book, gets totally inspired, and uses it as the foundation for the Three Musketeers. And boom, a legend is born. But this might be the most incredible part of the whole story. His legacy isn't just in books. He had 2 sons. And unbelievably, his direct family line is still around. It has survived all the way to today. In fact, in 1969, one of his descendants was legally allowed to change his name back to the original family name. The bloodline of the real D'Artagnan is still with us. How cool is that? So in the end, you have 2 D'Artagnans, the man, who was a model of duty and loyalty, and the myth, who was a global symbol of adventure. The real man died once on a battlefield in 1673. But his legend, it's completely immortal. It really makes you wonder, at what point does the history stop and the story take over?